What's up, summoners? King Blair here. Today, we're going to be talking about the current banner heroes, Vivian as well as Tammarine, and whether or not you should pull for them. It is very important to note, before I keep going, that next week is a limited rerun of Vivian, Dizzy, and the newly buffed Elfelt that you need to consider if you want to pull for them. They are limited and they won't be around for long. We'll talk about it a little bit at the beginning, but just know that that is next week, and it's very harsh right now. It's very hard because it's gonna be a tough time for free-to-play players, and you're gonna have to make some very hard decisions for your account. But before we get into that, if you like the video, make sure you like, subscribe, and join the Discord server. Link down in the description. Also, tomorrow at 7 p.m. CST, we have the official Kings Cup. It will be streaming live. If you're someone that's like, oh, it's just gonna be all golden boys, well, it's actually 3 different brackets that are participating for this pool. There's the high champion, that'll be tomorrow. There's Little League, that will also be tomorrow and Saturday. And then there's also the mid champion bracket that will be on Saturday, where it's a variety of different players. So it's very, very exciting. It'll be a very fun event. 4 hours of streaming both days, a ton of fun. Come out, support the people that are participating, that have been working super hard, and just support the people. But yeah, that just quick plug there to make sure you tune in tomorrow. But aside from that, let's get to what you actually came here for, which is the video. So starting with, as always, I like to start with saying the situation that we are right now, as well as giving a quick summary on the unit. Right now, it's not a great time, especially if you're a free-to-play player, and especially if you're an early game player, because this is going to be a very hard decision that I cannot make for you. I'm going to try to give you all the information you may need, but at the end of the day, it will need to be your decision. You need to take a very hard look at your account and decide what you want to pull for, and if you can afford to pull for these units. Again, very hard decisions that Smilegate is really putting you guys in a tough situation here. But next week is the GG collab rerun, where you will have Vivian, Dizzy, and Elfelt. Elfelt being newly buffed, looking like she's going to be a very powerful cleave unit, as well as just an all-around really good pickup. And since it's limited, it won't be coming back for a year, so you won't be able to play with her if you get into cleave for a whole year if you don't pull for her. Dizzy, while she has fallen off a lot, Dizzy still has a very strong early game presence. For late game, she's not as impactful, but you can still definitely use her. But primarily, she's going to be for PvE. Now, for earlier game players, which is why you really need to consider your early game players, then there's also going to be Vivian, who is probably the one you aren't going to lose too much sleep over if you don't pull, since she's primarily just there for Banshee one-shot and for having some fun with certain cleave team compositions. But for the most part, there are other units that can do Banshee one-shot. You don't need to have Vivian. But there are 3 limiteds, and if you're a collector, you're probably like, oh man, I'm so done. Or if you're someone that's paranoid that they'll maybe get buffed in the future, I feel that, and that's tough. I will say, in terms of priority, if you're a late game player, Elfelt will probably be something you really want to pick up. If you're an early game player, Dizzy is definitely something you want to pick up. But now, what about these two, right? You're probably like, okay, you talk about all these GG collab coming next week that are limited. What about these two that I really want to get into today? Vivian, overall, oh man, she's such a great unit. She's super underrated, does a ton of damage, can stop things like a tie win, can stop any type of CC that requires that requires you to have a strip. She can set up immunity as well as an attack buff, fits into a variety of team compositions, can be made as a support, can be made as a tank, can be made as a damage dealer, can be made to do all of them. I personally use mine for Banshee one-shot team, as well as for Asmacon 13. I use her there, so she has a PvE presence as well. So she does a lot. She's very powerful, and people love her, especially for the cleanse E. For certain matchups where, for example, for Cerise, you're able to remove the speed debuff and apply that nice little immunity and attack buff, right? So very powerful unit, very powerful unit. Does require you to have the artifact, so if you do decide to pull for her, you will need this artifact. She's not as priority, and you don't need to pull for her if you really want alpha, if you're a cleave player. She is very good though, and again, ideally you want all of them. But as far as priority on the list, she's strong, but she's not necessarily game breaking. There are other units you can use, although no one really puts immunity for 3 turns and attack buff, right? So she's very unique in that aspect. Tammarine, she's the queen of PvE. Any other week that it wasn't a collab the next week, this is a no-brainer. You should have pulled for this unit. But because there's a GG collab next week, it becomes very hard. If you're an early game player, if you pull full Tammarine, your PvE life is done. There is almost no PvE content that you can't use her, with the exception of Banshee and Wyvern. Every other PvE content in this game, Tammarine destroys. She is the PvE queen. There's only 2 out of all the PvE that's in this game. 2 modes that she doesn't function. She's just the best PvE unit, and she's a staple. If you're an early game player, I still highly suggest you pull for her, but just know that means that you may not be able to pull for things like Dizzy that will also help you a lot as early game players. So you really need to take a look at Tammarine and at Dizzy, decide which one you like, but just know that Tammarine will help your progression a lot. Granted, Tammarine is not limited, so there's still the hope that she'll get a rerun before next year, or that you'll pull for her in the Covenants, but it's just the best guaranteed way to get it, and you'll progress way faster in the game if you get this unit. I almost say it's worth skipping on the limited, but again, limiteds only come once a year, and we don't know the splash that alpha will make. So with that, let's actually look a little bit deeper into what they actually do and talk a little bit more, and as well I'll show you guys builds for each of the different units and what you can do. First, let's start with Vivian, and this is the one that you're most likely gonna have to skip. Even if you really like her, unless you already have all the GG collab heroes, you're probably gonna have to skip this unit. So Vivian, very high base speed. She does get an exclusive equipment that will increase her HP by a little bit, which again lets her survive a little bit better. She has very good defense and has some really good critical hit rate and some very good attack stat, right? Very traditional mage, attack mage type stat lines. And the imprint, of course, is self crit rate, which is one of the best self imprints you can have because it eases the restraints on your gearing the most. So it's one of the best ones for a unit like Vivian. Crit rate is just amazing. It lets you have HP, more defense, more crit damage, more speed, a lot of different stuff. As far as kit, the S1 is quite basic. It essentially just gives you a 30% CR push if you crit, right? So if you crit, you'll get 30% CR push. Quite basic, does quite a lot of damage, and it is very nice skill to have. I believe the exclusive equipment gives an extra 5% to this skill if you choose it. It's probably the worst one, and you're not going to be picking that one. So there's almost no reason to talk about it. But again, it's a nice little push, and it does make it so if you have a fast Vivian, she can take quite a lot of turns since she's getting a 15% combat readiness boost every time she has ones. Very, very powerful there. The S2, on the other hand, is the reason why she's known for. It's a skill that's on a 2-turn cooldown. That in itself is ridiculous. A 2-turn cooldown skill is so low. It's an AoE attack that actually has really good ratios, and you can soul burn for more damage. This skill is just raw damage, but it does so much freaking damage, it's ridiculous. And if you manage to get the kill, it reactivates the skill. So for example, if you do this and you kill, it will reactivate the skill, and if you kill again with the second one, it will reactivate it, of course with reduced damage each one. It is, if you've never seen it, I recommend you YouTube it, but a Vivian flush is one of the most gorgeous things Epic 7 has. You essentially, if you're able to set up a cleave with Vivian, with herself giving the attack button and everything, and you're able to do this S2, it is beautiful. You just essentially sweep the team with a storm. It's very amazing, right? It looks amazing when you get it off, right? So very cool skill, and you can soul burn for more damage. 2-turn cooldown as well, which is one of the reasons why she's a really good unit for Asimekon because of her low S2 cooldown. That's one of the reasons she's so good at Asimekon as well as Banshee, because she's able to clear the waves. As far as the S3, this is also, again, a really powerful skill. It sets up immunity as well as attack and greater attack buff, right? Very, very, very powerful, right? And gives herself greater attack buff. The exclusive equipment, what it does is either give you a 1 debuff cleanse before you set up the buffs. That can be good if you're going against units like Bazaar and you have a fast one with the General Purgus. The Bazaar will push it back, a little bit push from the General Purgus. You use this skill, you remove the unable to be buffed, and you apply these buffs. That's the most traditional one for anti-cleaving and for anti-A-Tywing and for anti-Ceresing, right? That's the main reason why the cleanse EE would be used. The other one gives her a 50% CR push line, which is primarily used for Cleave Vivian as well as for PvE Vivian. And this skill, again, it's so powerful. It does so much, and it can honestly just win you the game if you're able to get it off against the right opponent, right? And PvP. Very, very powerful. With Dignosorb, you get a barrier and you do extra damage, which is why Dignosorb is almost a must-have for her. There are replacements such as Proof of Valor, but Dignosorb being the best one for her since you get a thick barrier after using the skill. So that's Vivian. As far as to where you would use her and kind of some builds for her, let me show you guys a Vivian that I do have right here from the Discord that I recently, in today's streams, I changed it slightly to include some of them. This is a very good Vivian. It's very traditional. You can make her faster. You can make her bulkier depending on what you want to do. But this Vivian will slap and will be fast. Very, very powerful Vivian. And can take a couple of hits. As far as the Vivian that I have, I actually do use my Vivian primarily for PvE. So mine is not a PvP Vivian. I use mine for Banshee one-shot. And I actually use her, and she can actually do a 3-man Banshee one-shot. And I do use her in Banshee. I go here, and then this is my Banshee team. I'm not going to show it just because I don't want this video to be like 40-50 minutes long and me showing you the Banshee one shot, but I'll showcase it another day. But it's a 3-man Banshee, and the key player is that Vivian, because she's able to CR lap, she's able to AoE kill the first wave, and she's able to also set up the 3-turn attack buff, right? So she does everything for a Banshee one shot. One of the reasons she's so popularly used for that Banshee one shot, and she's kind of core to a lot of those teams. But this is my Vivian. It's not great, right? She's very mediocre. I would not be able to take her to PvP. She's way too squishy, but she's there legit just for that PvE presence. If you're wondering why the crit rate is so low, it's because it's for Banshee, right? And that's the only reason I use her. I never use her for anything else. So now let's go on to Tammarine, who is actually going to be a little bit spicier and quite good. There are 2 builds for Tammarine, and I'm gonna show them before we actually go to talk about Tammarine, just for the sake of time. This is my Tammarine. Tammarine works with trash gear. I use this Tammarine in all the end game PvE content, and she does perfectly fine. I use her for I can use her for Red Expedition. I can use her for Blue Expedition. I use her for Dark Expedition. I use her for Asimach Hunt. I use her for Labyrinth. I use her for Abyss. I use her for everything. You can use Tammarine for every PvE content that exists except for Wyvern and Banshee. That's it. Those 2 hunts are the only 2 you can't use Tammarine. Every other place you can use Tammarine, and she'll make that way easier. So that's a really good one. And on top of that, she also does have a PvP build that recently did get updated in the Discord server that makes her extremely fast with FRS. This is more for the Dark Expedition, but extremely fast, so you're able to cleave with Iceria. And it is a very popular cleave to use her and Iceria, right? So that's the, let me show you one more time because I feel like I left it pretty quickly. That's why she's so fast, and you're able to do some crazy stuff. But okay, now that we saw the builds and we kind of talked about where you can use her, let's actually see why she's so strong. She has 2 forms, and both forms are very good. So she is going to be a 5-star Fire Soul Weaver. As far as stats, she recently got a buff. She does get some FRS, which is nice for Dark Expedition, as well for some other stages. It's nice that your Tama doesn't get debuffed too much. The defense is nice. It's not bad. The HP is atrocious, and this signage, the Sagittarius, are known for having bad HP. So flat HP is actually really good for her. If you can get pieces that have a lot of flat HP as well as HP percentage, you are golden, because flat HP goes very well with her. She can do very well with flat HP. You can even get away with using flat HP mains that have flat percentage substats, and you can get away with that, and it'll still be really strong, right? So a lot, really low HP, but can be worked with. Her self-imprint is health if you did want to get more health, but usually I give the attack, because it's nicer to be able to move faster and kill more stuff, although the higher health would allow you to heal for more. So now let's look at the actual skills. She has 2 forms. Form number 1, pretty basic, Tammarine form. Essentially what it does is it heals the lowest health ally. Pretty basic. One of the reasons I use it with Celestine is so that this skill does extra healing. That's legit it, because you do have to wait to get your idle form, since your idle form does start at full cooldown, which is 8 turns, which is a lot, right? You have to wait 8 turns before you can use her second form. So typically you'll be using a lot of S1 and a lot of S2. So that's why I personally use Celestine. Some other people like to use things like Wondrous Potion Vial, and there's some other ones out there that you can also use. But this one, for her regular form, is just healing. And it's based on the ally's max health, which makes it nice because that way it doesn't necessarily need her health, right? So if it's a tank, it'll heal more. If it's a squishy, it won't heal as much. The S2, on the other hand, is an AoE heal, and this one is proportionate to your health. This heal is quite large, and it does help a lot. Very basic. It's just an AoE heal. Uses S2, she sings, and your whole team gets healed, and you decrease your cooldown by 1 turn. So essentially, it'll take you around 4 turns for her to reach her ultimate, and then you actually get to idle form. So when you switch to idle form, you get an AoE cleanse. That's already amazing, and you get an extra turn right after. So not only do you get to cleanse your whole team of any divas that they have, you take an extra turn, and you're able to set up your idle form skills. And she stays in idle form for 3 turns. You cannot switch back to regular form, which there's no point that you would need to, because all her skills are just strictly better in idle form. It's strictly better, right? Idle form is just way better. But the S1 in this form is an AoE attack that dispels all buffs. An AoE cleanse. Imagine a Basar S3. Granted, Basar S3 has other stuff. Imagine an Alencia S3 that cleanses every 2 turns, that also dual attacks for extra damage with the highest attack ally. That's invaluable. You're stripping buffs, which a lot of PvE content right now has a lot of buff reliant things. You strip it, and then you attack with the highest ally to do extra damage. It's broken. It's super broken. For PvE, for PvP, it's broken. Then for the S2, she has the single-handedly highest AoE CR push. She can CR push her team by 50%, which is ridiculous, and heals everyone. Right? So an AoE heal that also gives you a 50% CR push, that also gives you attack buff. It does everything, right? So you get that, you do that little thing, she dances, you get an attack buff, 50% CR push, and essentially almost an extra turn for her, like a 50% of the way there, and you get attack buff. It's just, she does everything, right? And then you can just do this again and cleanse, and then you're back to human form, but your counter will go down with it. So again, very complicated, but once you start using her, it's pretty basic. But she does everything. She cleanses, she strips, she attack buffs, she heals, she supports. She does everything. There's nothing that she doesn't do. She is a support that can, an aggressive support that does damage with your highest ally, that dispels the enemy, that heals, that buffs attack. What else do you want her to do? Right? She does any supporting that you need. She'll be able to do it, which is why she is such a great unit. And I personally, as far as pulling, if you're an early game player, I just highly suggest that you pull for Tammarine, because it will make your life so much easier. And hope that you can still get Elfel or Dizzy from the Covenant, but having Tama is invaluable. Having Dizzy and Tama, oh, you'll breeze through Abyss. You'll progress like nothing. Like you'll be like late game in 2 seconds, right? But Tama will help you get there a lot faster. So my recommendation is actually pull for Tama, and pray that you pull for the limiteds. But again, that is completely up to you, and you will have to make that decision for yourself. But that is all I have for you guys today. Hopefully y'all enjoyed, and hopefully, I really do hope that y'all have good luck on your summons, because it's hard, right? There's 2 really good units that normally I would have told you to pull for, but there's a collab next week, and the reality of it is that there's going to be a whole year where they're not going to be out, where they may become meta again, and you won't be able to pull for them, and there's a chance they'll never even come back, right? There is a chance that Elfel, Dizzy, and Soul will never come back. So because of all that, I strongly urge you guys to consider highly where you stand and decide what you need to do. But that is all I got for you guys today, and I will see y'all next time. Peace.